Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about in the Kantianism unit proper is Kant on lying and these very surprising things Kant says about lying. Kant seems to think that it is pretty much always wrong to lie, even in extreme cases where this just seems a ridiculous view. And the case Kant considers in the reading I gave you is this. This was a problem that a critic of Kant's threw out, a seeming counterexample to Kant's theory. And I said one response to a counterexample, where your theory seems to give you a ridiculous or crazy answer, is just to bite the bullet. Well, Kant seems to bite the bullet very, very hard here. What's the case? Well, the case is this murderer at the door. You are home, somebody runs up to your door and they're like, oh my God, this guy's trying to kill me. Will you hide me? And maybe even before you can say anything, they run and hide in the back room. Still trying to figure out what to do. Somebody else knocks on your door, suspicious bulge under their coat. Obviously the murderer, and says, well, have you seen my friend? He seemed very upset. I just want to talk with him about something. Maybe fingering the suspicious bulge under his coat, right? Now, look, this might seem a kind of ridiculous case to you, but you can think of real world analogs, real world cases that are a lot like this. Think about people hiding Jews from the Nazis in World War II. If the Gestapo or the SS comes to their door and says, do you know anything about people hiding Jews or other enemies of the state? Well, what should they do, right? And in Kant's case, you might think, well, slam the door, lock the door, whatever, get cute, dissemble, right? Dissemble means don't lie, but just mislead the person. Well, what does your friend look like, right? In cases like, the Gestapo or whoever at your door, you can't really do that, right? If you try to get cute, they're going to kick the door down. You can't fight them. There are a lot more of them than you. It seems like the only way to save the people hiding and to save yourself is to lie, right? And so practically everyone says, yeah, in this hypothetical case that Kant gives us, you should lie to the murderer. It would be wrong not to. Yeah, oh yeah, I saw your friend, they were banging on my door. Yeah, you're right, they seemed really upset. They ran down the alley over there. Or you think of the people hiding Jews or other people that the Nazis want to kill. They should say, oh no, gosh, no, of course we are loyal citizens of Hitler's Reich, right? Or whatever, right? They should lie through their teeth, partially because murderers and Nazis don't deserve the truth, but more importantly, we would think because it is the only way to save this person or these people's lives, right? And one thing I want you guys to notice is not only does utilitarianism give us the right answer here, it gives us pretty good reasons as to why, right? Lying is usually wrong because lying has bad consequences. People don't like being lied to. It undermines trust, which has bad consequences long term. But in this case, in this weird case, or cases like this, that lying has the best possible consequences. If you lie to the murderer at the door, that probably saves the person hiding in your house. A life saved on balance is good consequences, right? In the murderer at the door case, very good chance this person is going to kill you after they finish killing their victim. So lying probably saves two victims, right? And if we're thinking of the Gestapo or the SS, they're almost certainly going to kill you if you've been hiding people they want to kill. So, again, seems like not just saving one life, it seems like you're probably saving the lives of you and your family, if you have family there as well, right? The harm done is either non-existent or very small. Mr. Disappointed Murderer, right? The good done is huge. At least one life, probably multiple lives saved. And even the murderer, if we just think of a murder at the door case, in the long term, even he might think we've done, that we've done a good thing for him by lying, right? Attempted murder is a way less serious charge than murder, and if this guy's being this ham-fisted about it, he is gonna get caught, right? So it seems practically everyone says lie to the murderer at the door, and the utilitarian not only gives us the right answer, what most of us think is the right answer, lie to the murderer, they give us pretty good reasons as to why, right? Better consequences. Now, just to be clear, not everyone says this. There are some very idealistic people who think it's always wrong to lie. There was, actually a group, religious group in this one area of France. I'm forgetting the name of it. And people in this village hid Jews and other enemies of the Nazi regime. And it came time to the only way they could really get around it, put the SS and the Gestapo off, was to forge identity papers. And some people kind of balked at this. They said, we will risk our lives, we won't lie, right? Or you have tales of these Christian saints who will not lie. They'll maybe misdirect the Romans or whoever who want to murder them. Yeah, I mean, a very small group of people will agree with Kant here, but practically all of us will say, no, lie and lie as well as you can. Kant, of course, says no. Tell the truth to the murderer at the door. Now, this seems a very big problem for his theory because this seems like a ridiculous answer. This seems as obvious a counterexample to Kant's theory as, way back when Polemarchus was giving us his account of justice, and it seemed to commit him to saying you should give a weapon back to your friend who's lost his mind. Kant saying you should tell the truth to a murderer at the door seems to be equally problematic, if not more so. Kant runs into this counterexample. He bites the bullet. That does not seem a good response. Now look, I actually think Kant is wrong in this. I do think his own theory would allow us to lie to the murderer at the door. Just because it's Kant's theory doesn't mean he's right about everything. On some points, Einstein actually got wrong what the theory of relativity implied. I won't get into it. So it does happen, right? But I think we need to understand Kant's reasoning. And understanding Kant's reasoning will help us to understand both the theory itself a little better, to deal with some challenges to the theory, and in a weird way, but a way that I think will become clearer, will set the stage for some of the stuff we're going to talk about with the material on war that we will start on in the next unit. Okay, so why does Kant say we should lie to the murderer at the door? Well, both the formula of universal law and the formula of humanity seem to rule it out. Remember, formula of universal law, if everybody lies, lying won't work. Seems like the same with the murderer at the door as lying to get money. If everybody lied to murderers at the door, murderer would know you're lying. Lying wouldn't work, so we can't universalize it. Formula of humanity would say that we are using the murderer as a mere means. We do not respect his ability to make choices, so we try to manipulate him into doing what we want. That is using him as a mere means. And you might say, well, yeah, okay, we're using him as a mere means, but only to save his victim. We're saving a life on balance. And Kant would say, look, you cannot use someone as a mere means, even to a very good end. It is still wrong. So both of these would seem to rule out lying to the murderer at the door. Now this, as I said, this seems ridiculous. So even though we can see how Kant reaches this solution, I think the best thing to do here is to try to show that his theory really does not have this result. Unless you can do that, Kantianism does not seem like a terribly plausible theory. This is a very problematic case for it. So I'm going to talk about two prominent solutions that have been offered. One of them, even though I respect the philosopher who came up with this quite a bit, and I think she's done some really good work, I think her proposed solution to this is actually, just to be blunt about it, bad. And it creates a lot of problems. But it's interesting the problems it creates. The second solution is by another guy, and I think it does a lot better job. But let's talk about the bad solution first. Christine Korsgaard, very famous interpreter of Kant, very good philosopher. Like I've said, I'm going to give her a hard time here, but I think a lot of her work is very good. This just actually isn't. Everybody has off days, right? So Korsgaard's solution is to say, well, look, whether or not this passes the formula of universal law depends on how you frame it. If you just frame it as lying, well, then maybe it doesn't pass. But if you frame the principle in the right way, if you describe it in the right way, then it will pass the formula of universal law. She says, look, the murderer says to you, I'm looking for my friend. He's lying, right? The SS or the Gestapo at your door say that the people they're looking for are enemies of the state. They're not, right? They're just people they want to kill. They also lie constantly about what they're going to do with, the quote enemies of the state, unquote. They're not going to admit they're going to murder them, right? So Korsgaard would say, look, the murderer at the door is lying to you or trying to deceive you. Could you universalize the principle, I will lie to people who are trying to lie to me? Well, Korsgaard says, well, of course, if the murderer knew that you knew he was lying, it wouldn't work. But the key here, the little trick is, well, the murderer is lying to you and he thinks his lie has taken you in. He doesn't realize the principle, I will always lie to murderers, applies to him because he thinks he's fooling you. Lo and behold, the principle could actually pass and we could lie to the murderer at the door. Now, Korsgaard will admit, she's like, okay, actually this doesn't pass the formula of humanity. Pretty clearly you're still using the murderer as a mere means. But, what do you do with this? Well, she says, well, the formulas give you different answers, but, the formula of universal law, it's a more ideal principle. You only use it when people are treating you well. If someone is trying to use you, you can use this less demanding formula of universal law. Yeah, I think this is really problematic for a few reasons. But the biggest one is that Korsgaard, in trying to avoid one objection against Kant, I think just runs headlong and very hard into another objection against Kant's theory. And that objection is G.W.F. Hegel's empty formalism charge. Hegel was a philosopher who lived a little bit after Kant. Their lives overlap just a little bit. I think, when Hegel was basically in high school, Kant died. Might have just been later, right? They never met each other. They never really discussed with each other. But, Kant was already very famous, a very big deal in Germany in Hegel's day. Hegel was German. Kant was as well. And so Hegel, of course, responded to Kant, and Hegel said this. He didn't think Kant's moral theory did any real work. He says, well, look, you say the categorical imperative is supposed to tell us what's right and what's wrong, but actually, I think what you're doing is you already know what's right and what's wrong, and you're just tinkering with this formula of universal law till it gives you the right answer. You know it's wrong to lie to a friend to get money, so you tinker with it until it spits out the answer it's wrong to do that. You know it's wrong to steal, so you mess with it until it gives you that answer, right? Hegel is saying, we already know what is right and wrong, and the categorical imperative isn't doing any work. It's just pointless, he says. And I think Korsgaard really does seem to be guilty of Hegel's charge, right? with a vengeance, right? Because she says, well, obviously the formula of universal law has given us the wrong answer here. So we got to fiddle with the principle we submit to it till it gives us the right answer. And well, okay, even weirder, formula of universal law, formula of humanity give us different answers here, but that's fine because we know which answer's right, so we'll just use the formula of universal law. And I think Hegel could say, it's like, look, what if you just keep tinkering with Kant's theory every time it gives you a wrong or weird answer, that proves my point. Kant's theory is not doing any real work here. It is not telling us what the moral rules are. Unless the theory can give us surprising answers that don't really fit with what we already know, I am going to say, I think Hegel would say, Kant's moral theory is doing no real work. It doesn't really have any value. And Korsgaard, I think her solution in trying to save Kant from these weird things he says about lying, I think she makes things way worse. Because, what's worse? A theory that says weird things about some cases, or a theory that ends up actually not saying anything at all we don't already know? Luckily, I do think there's a better solution, one that I think is actually right to this problem. And that is the one offered by Michael Cholby. And Cholby says, look, it is okay to use force in self-defense or defense of others. And he digs through Kant's work, and even Kant says this, if you have to kill another person to defend your own life, that is morally acceptable. And he has a pretty good reason for saying this, right? Look, normally killing another human being would be using them as a mere means. Obviously, if you kill them, you don't respect them, and obviously you want to accomplish something by killing them. Textbook definition of using them as a mere means. But in cases of self-defense, when you are being attacked by someone who wants to kill you, they create a situation where one of two things happens. Either you have to let them use you as a mere means, kill you, or you have to fight back, possibly killing them, right? They create the situation. They, in a sense, force you to do this. So fighting back is not using them as a mere means because of their role in creating the situation. In fact, Cholby would go so far as to say, look, if you don't fight back, there seems to be something wrong about that, or if you let innocent people get killed, because letting somebody else kill people or kill you does not seem to show enough respect for your humanity or their humanity. And so Cholby would say, look, obviously it's way worse. It's a way worse violation of your ability to act freely to be killed than it is to be lied to. If someone kills you, your ability to act freely is gone forever. If they lie to you, they impair it in a certain case, but it's not the same as being killed. So Cholby will say, look, if Kant allows lying in some cases, allows killing in some cases, by consistency, he has to allow lying in self-defense or defense of other innocent people. So Cholby would say, look, because in this case, lying is necessary for the defense of another innocent person, and arguably, in fact, almost certainly, self-defense of your own life, lying is allowable. In this case, because the murderer at the door or the Nazis at the door create this situation where you either have to allow them to kill you and this other innocent person or lie to them, lying does not use them as a mere means in an unacceptable way. It is just a form of self-defense. Now, I think Cholby's answer is a lot better than Korsgaard's. You don't have this weird result that the two formulations give you different answers. And I think it allows us to meet Hegel's objection, right? Because Kantianism still gives us very surprising answers about lying. Not ridiculous answers, but surprising, right? Think about white lying. Is it allowable to lie to another person to spare their feelings or to lie to them for their own good? Kantianism would say absolutely not, right? I could lie to you in self-defense if you want to kill me or assault me, but I can't lie to you because I think telling you the truth would make you unhappy. If I lie to you because I think, you say, well, how do you, do you like my new shirt? And I'm sitting there, oh my God, that's terrible. Lying might make you happy, but I would be using you as a mere means to your own happiness. And Kant would say that is definitely wrong. Kant would take a very hard line on a lot of so-called white lies, right? They are using the other person as a mere means, at best as a mere means to their own happiness. More often, I think we're using, when someone asks us an awkward question, we're using them as a mere means to avoid awkwardness, right? When we lie. And I think Kant would say, he's like, look, they might be offended, they might be hurt, but that is part of treating them with respect, weirdly enough. You give them the information, you don't try to manipulate them for what you think of as their own good. Even more clearly, Kant would rule out paternalistic lying, right? Doctors used to do this all the time, and they would do it on utilitarian grounds. We won't give the patient full information because we think they'll make the wrong choice. If we give them some options we think are bad ones, or we'll lie to them about their prognosis because that'll make them happier. Straight utilitarian grounds, right? Now, doctors don't tend to do this anymore. It's widely regarded as unethical. But Kant gives a definite answer here, right? Kant would say, look, if you lie to a patient, even if by lying to them you make them happier, even if by lying to them you improve their prognosis, you are using them as a mere means. So on Cholby's reading, Kant still takes a very hard line on lying, and his theory still gives us some answers that are fairly clear and often very surprising. So I think, with Cholby's reading, we don't run into this empty formalism, and we avoid this seemingly ridiculous answer that we have to tell the truth to murderers. Now, one other thing I want to say about Hegel's empty formalism charge, and you should keep this clear when you think about Kant, is that I don't think moral rules mean the same thing as a mathematical formula or an algorithm, right? An algorithm, mathematical formulas are algorithms, but an algorithm is just a very, very cut and dried, simple set of rules that a computer could follow. I don't think Kant thinks that moral rules are like that. Kant will think there are some very clear cases of using someone as a mere means. There are some very clear cases of not using someone as a mere means, but there are also vague cases that we need to think about. But think about that. Think about this. That doesn't mean that the rule doesn't do any work. That doesn't mean that the rule isn't important, right? I'll give you guys an example from another philosopher, H.L.A. Hart. Imagine that there is a sign in a park that says no vehicles in the park. If someone who's in a wheelchair rolls her wheelchair through, we all know that doesn't violate the rules, right? If a kid has some Matchbox cars in his backpack and walks through the park, we all know that that doesn't violate the rules. If a guy drives his Ford 250 up into the park and drives through it, we all know that that does, right? If some guy tries to drive his motorbike through the park, we know that violates the rules. The rule has a clear function. It definitely rules some things out. Even if there might be some borderline cases we don't agree about, right? If a kid has a remote controlled car and is, playing with it, does that run under the vehicle rule or not? I don't know. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. If someone rides a skateboard, I would tend to think it does, but maybe it doesn't, right? This rule, no vehicles in the park, can still do some work, even if there might be borderline cases that it's not entirely clear. And I think Kant would say the same thing. Formula of universal law, formula of humanity, it's not going to spit you back an answer like an algorithm would, but in many cases, it is very clear. If I lie to you to get money, that's using you as a mere means. If I threaten you unless you do what I want, that's using you as a mere means. If I lie to you for your own good, what I take to be your own good, that's using you as a mere means, right? So despite this fact that Kant's rules might not give us mathematically neat answers, I still think they can and do a lot of work. We will, as we get more into the applied cases, we'll talk about some cases where maybe it's a little unclear what Kantianism would say. I don't think that proves fatal. In fact, Kant and Aristotle will both say, and I tend to agree with them, that trying to get too much precision in ethics might lead you to ridiculous places, which my own personal perspective is where these effective altruist sorts end up. All right, so that will wrap up things for Kantianism. I mean, we're not going to leave it behind. We will be using Kantianism and utilitarianism a lot more in the next couple of units, but that wraps up my presentation, my initial presentation of Kantianism.